And depending upon what part of the world you're in, if it's Friday, it is the CEO series where we bring together the most phenomenal people and they talk about their careers, from entrepreneurs, authors, inventors, disruptors. Our guest today, Raymond P. Lewis, Mr. Global Events Marketing PR expert in the New York area. He has been featured in the 40 Under 40 Award, Black Achievers in the Industry Award, Man of Vision Award, Crane's New York Notable LGBTQ Leaders and Executive List, and it goes on and on. He's worked for clients as General Motors. He worked for the inauguration of President Obama, his second term inauguration. And I'm just glad to have you to spend some time with me, man. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's always a pleasure to see you, Ron. You know, it's always a pleasure to see you. If you recall, we met doing an event, the Winter Antique Show. You were a guest and you worked with Martha Stewart, and we connected on, you were doing the African American furniture designer showcase, and I said, well, I got a whole list. She said, you brought me in, and we've been friends ever since. So
ever since that time, because I have a way of connecting with talented people. I think that's what it is, and I knew you were the man beyond that. So cool.
I felt the same way. The feeling was mutual. I said, I need to know him, and I'm glad to still know you, and it's an honor to be here on your show.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about your career from starting out, Morehouse graduate, and you go from there to become a global PR, events, marketing, you name it. You're the person to go to. One of the key points I read in your bio, it says that you have a Rolodex that people would kill to have, connections. How did all that come about from?
Well, I can say, first, let me just correct you one thing. I didn't graduate from Morehouse. I attended Morehouse.
Okay, that's cool.
I came back to New York to go to school. I did go there. I still claim it because it was the top African-American school. It was a different time, but it was a wonderful experience, and I still treasure it to this day. And some of the best friends and professors in the world are from there. But how I got this Rolodex is starting at Morehouse. Okay. I met the president of Morehouse at a barbecue for some people I was working for who were all African-American elite graduates from Morehouse doing things in arts and culture, Dr. Robert LaPrince. And Robert LaPrince started an organization called the National Council of Culture and Arts. And he told me, you will meet the world if you work in arts. He said, intellectual people, educated people, philanthropic people, all gravitate towards arts and culture, and you should always embrace universal culture. And I watched this man move through crowds, move through different cultures, and he could remember a person, remember a name, and I admired him. Him and Terry Williams. Terry said, say the name 3 times, always send a note, stay in touch, keep it. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all these other things. You had to know people, make sure they remembered you for the right reasons. And I've kept those relationships and cultivated them over 40 years.
I like to say the name 3 times, send a follow-up note.
Yeah, always send a follow-up note, always greet them with a smile, always look your best, always read something about them. You should always know something about the person that you're meeting. It's an insult to their journey that you walk up to them, expect to be received, expect to be invited in, expect to be a part of something, and you know nothing about them. You respect them by saying, you know, you had an amazing journey. There's so many things I admire about you. That gets their attention.
Okay, cool. So I think that's something that a lot of younger people need to realize, because it's not, so you built a career when it was not social. Right. And social was kind of coming later. But your foundation was built on relationships, building and harvesting those relationships.
Building and harvesting those human relationships.
Yes.
You know, I love the digital age. I love the technology, but I still think that people like to have a personal touch.
Yeah.
People like to have something that they can say. I remember, Ron, when we were in Martha's Vineyard having dinner at Atria, and he says, you're eating too much butter on that lobster. And we will remember that. But the lobster was good, the butter was good, but it's a memory that we share. And when you hit the click button, it's over.
It's over with, yeah. And that was a true story too, because that's when we hung out in Martha's Vineyard years ago, and that was probably during the time Barack's first term running for office.
He was actually running for office. You're absolutely right. That was like 2007. I'll never forget it.
Mhm.
2006, 7. And look at where you are now. Fast forward all these years. You're in the other side of the world doing amazing things.
Yeah.
And we try to hold it down here in America.
And you're doing well here in America, because we had a project we were going to work on together, but it didn't quite come through. But that's still on the drawing boards for probably next year. So as you left Morehouse and you came back to New York, and for the people on the call on the show today, Raymond is based in New York. He's at Martha's Vineyard now, and he's kind of hanging out for the week, with
Mhm.
the elite kind of people. So how did it start from there? What was your first project in events, marketing, or PR? What was the first project you started moving into this direction?
I'm gonna tell you where it comes from, and the inspiration is from my family. I always go back to my grandmother. My grandmother loved I love entertaining. I love the good party. I love the good time. I got a job with the top entertainment newspaper in America, in New York. Well, actually, in America, the Village Voice. Everything was arts, culture, music,
Yeah.
political commentary. It was the number one alternative paper in the city. It was founded in the '50s by a bunch of top writers, and my job was multicultural supplements. We didn't call it multicultural. Though. It was called like cultural significance, embracing things that went on monthly. But Black history was important to me because I was Black.
Hmm.
Latin history was because I had Latins, and I sort of pushed that. And from that, we started doing these events, started doing all these interesting things. I got to go to all the nightclubs and everything. And I got to collect all these different people and see all different kinds of things. So my first event was my 30th birthday party.
Okay.
I had to make this big, huge event. I invited 1,000 people. I put together, it had to be black tie. I had jazz because I love jazz. I had a big band. I had top DJs. I had all kinds of food. I said, I'm going to launch myself from here. And it was absolutely crazy. We closed down the street. They had to actually, the nightclub actually ran out of alcohol because I had so many people. The Knicks came, the Miami Heat came. I didn't realize how many people I had engaged over the 7 years I worked there.
My
And
goodness.
it showed me you got a power here, Raymond. How they said the people like you have so many people coming through the door. Where do you know all these people from? They wanted to back me in a restaurant. This was just me being social. I realized there was a power in socialization.
Okay, okay, and I could take it beyond that. So my good buddy in DC, my big shot friend in DC, and we lived in Saudi together. Jim Moy says, "Spot on. Show up prepared, doing your research, and getting to know the other person, the relationship piece." This is what he's speaking to.
I'm looking at it. He's absolutely right. He's right. You got to know something about a person.
Yeah,
It shows your respect for them, and it gives the people a perspective of who you are. This guy looks. He wants to know something. Lady, she wants to know something about you. She's looking. You see the similarities. You'll see where you can segue in. Where's the great place for you all to bridge the gap to get to know each other,
hmm
to get to work together.
hmm
It may not be a good fit at this time.
Wow.
It might be at another time. So you put them in I got to keep this in the hot hopper
Yeah,
because this is a good lead.
yeah. I got to keep you close. I got to keep you close. So 1,000 people. I couldn't even think that I know 1,000 people. Well, I can probably know 1,000 people, but would they show up? Now, showing up because you sent an invite, it says something to you when you can bring people, the New York Knicks, the Miami Heat, and that level of person that would say, this is something for me to go to. So how does that happen?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, a friend of mine said something recently. I said, this sounds like me. She said, someone says, how do I get on your list? I said, you don't ask. When you build a brand and
Yeah,
people know that if you're going to do something, it's going to be top of the line, it's going to
yeah,
be classy, it's going to be the right folks. That's a coveted invitation. And when I
yeah,
send you an invitation, when you don't take it, you will remember the next time you get one.
yeah, yeah. I remember when there was a new dealership that was opening in New York. General Motors opened a new Cadillac dealership, and you were that was your event. And I went there, and we all went there, and I was just amazed by, the celebrities that were there and all the cool people that were there. I said, this guy knows what he's doing, because I couldn't even begin the process of even trying to put something like that together. Organizational skills, that comes into play. Can you give us some insights on that?
Well, you have to understand something. When I opened that General Motors dealership, that was the first time a dealership had been built in New York City. One, it was going to be an African American owned dealership in Harlem.
Yeah.
Harlem is a historical community. So I said, we're going to a historical community. It's the first time an African Americans owning a dealership in a community of that size, that magnitude. It was being back. The neighborhood was gentrifying, and I needed to make sure that while we were building this neighborhood and including everybody, we maintained the cultural integrity that this is an African American neighborhood that's globally recognized. So I tried to pull in all the different aspects of it: the top restaurants, the top entertainers. It was all known for jazz, music, culture, arts. So I had everybody pull together. The politicians needed to bridge. There was no such thing as this wasn't, I don't care what your agenda was. If you have a stake in this community, if you got a stake in that program. And I pulled it all together. And we had to not only do that, we had to open it up, do this huge opening, all the celebrities, and bring all this media attention. And then in 5 hours, turn it right back to a working dealership.
Yeah.
It was quite a feat.
It was quite a feat. Organizational skills and pulling all that together. So how do you put the pieces together? Because, when you think of an event and someone calls you, now you told me that you're scouting out a project at Martha's Vineyard now, and putting it together. What do you look for as a client comes to you and they're giving you their ideas? How do you digest all of that and kind of put it into a working model?
It's so interesting. It's like, I like to cook.
Okay.
And it's just, I treat an event just like I treat a recipe. You take an inventory. I know what takes the longest to cook, what takes the longest to get to. What are all the elements of it? Just like you need all the ingredients, you need all the pieces. There's the venue, there's the food, there's the audience, there's the celebrity, there's the MC, there's the setup, there's the breakdown, there's the decor, there's the enhancements, there's the filler in, there's the community piece, there's the media piece. You outline everything. And then once you put that outline together, then you say, let's look at the budget. What's most important that I achieve all of this within that budget? And sometimes you got to scale things down. Sometimes you got to change things up. Sometimes you go from fab chic to fab cheap, but you still got to be fabulous. It takes the art to make that happen.
I admire that, because if you look at, say, the work that I do, you diagnose the client as to what their needs are, and you kind of design from the. But I like the metaphor with using the recipe. What were some important lessons you've learned throughout that journey? You work with people across the globe. You do a lot of work with all the big celebrities. What is some key points that you've learned from that?
Oh, wow. There's so many. But what I think some of the key points is you've got to be a good listener.
Okay.
And you've got to size up the room. That was brought to my attention by someone. I know how to pull it together, but sometimes my vision may be too much for people, because I want to take it to, why shoot for the moon when you can go for the stars, is the way I see it. Sometimes that may be too much for people. You have to size up the room. You got to listen to the client so you can make sure that they're happy. They will be happy, but they're happy with you. They're happy with you. Don't take people past go. Everybody can't go there. You give them what they want, and you give them to it in such a way that they appreciate it and they want to continue the working relationship. Be a good listener. That's a very key portion to doing this kind of work.
Okay. So one of the key findings that came from the so-called COVID experience in organizations was that organizations need to listen more. So that's cool that you said that, because you need to listen to your clients and listen to listen, as opposed to listening to wait till they pause and then I try and come in with my piece to do that. Any key points that you could offer us on how do you listen? Because everybody says, yeah, I'm a good listener, but everybody knows that you block everything out and you wait till the pause and then you put your piece into it.
You know what? You know the answer you're looking for.
Okay.
90% of the time when people ask a question, they already know the answer. Lead them to the answer.
Okay.
Let them do the talking. If you talk more than the client, he's not getting a chance to tell, he or she is not getting a chance to tell you what they want.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And come in with an agenda. You
Mhm.
set the agenda that leads you to the information you need to execute the event.
Okay.
Sometimes you got to direct them. Sometimes they don't know where they're going. You've got to give them an opportunity to receive it and give them an opportunity to be creative about the delivery. They know what they want. I always tell people, tell me what your wish list is.
Okay.
Tell me what you see. And then if it's wrong, you've got to find a way to show them. Sometimes you got to show them the absolute wrong thing so you can lead them to the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And don't give too many choices. Too many choices, you'll get caught up in decision making for the rest of your life.
Okay. Okay, cool. So you're talking about that. Now I know you love to cook. I know that you love to cook, Chef Raymond. Um, how did that come about? How did that love for cooking? Because you use a metaphor, of recipes, equating that to a project, ingredients, and all those kinds of things. Where did the love for cooking, the chef piece, come from?
You know what's interesting? I learned to love cooking from my grandmother. My grandmother taught me how to cook. I cooked with her all the time. My grandmother, interesting woman. She was a cook. She ran a number banker. She took care of everybody in the neighborhood. She cooked for every event. There was always cooking going on. And I was right by her side. And I loved it. She died when I was like 8 years old. And I remembered so many things about it. And I remember when I went in the kitchen one day, I said, I'm going to make this dish that Nana made. And I tasted all these seasonings. She had a lot of seasonings in the kitchen. And I thought, this was in it, this was in it. And then I made it. And my mother said, okay, my mother was not a great cook. She was a
Yeah.
great mom, but she wasn't a great cook. So she said, you're cooking from now on. And it just kind of grew.
Okay.
And professionally, when I got into this business, this is a high energy business. It's a lot. It can be stressful if you don't know how to manage that.
Yeah.
And it can be very taxing on your time. Cooking became relaxing for me.
It's funny because we had a guest on the other week. She was an emergency room physician. So you would think the stress when people coming in, gunshot wounds and all these broken legs and all of this. And she says, I am at my calmest moment when everyone else is stressed out in the emergency room. And then managing that piece, that stressful side.
Well, that's interesting. He said, like a doctor told me, a postman may walk 10 miles a day, but the body's used to that walk. So it becomes normal. Like for people say, how do you handle a stressful event? When I've got to say, get this over here, do that, this is not right. It's like energy for me.
Energy for you.
I love it's like directing a great like operating. The curtain goes up as showtime. And you feel like, wow, I'm good. This is perfect for me.
Yeah.
I'm bored when it's like there's nothing to do. I need something to raise my blood pressure a little bit and give me be creative in my head.
Okay. So the next question I want to ask you is how do you stay focused and motivated? Because this is fast paced. You're dealing with a lot of egos with what you do, because successful people, entertainers, and all these people are successful people. They have big egos. How do you stay focused and motivated in that climate?
Well, first of all, you give them credit for being there.
Okay.
And you remember that you're at the table because you bring value to it.
Okay.
I don't enter the room with a thank you for being here. I enter the room with I'm glad we got a chance to meet each other.
Okay.
Now, let's move forward in a positive light. And you give them that's the client. Now every now and then you will run into a client that the ego is bigger than the journey, and you let them continue on their own journey. This is not going to work, but 90% of the time I can navigate myself through that. Very rarely that happens because we find an equilibrium. Sometimes you got to reach, if it's the ego is the job, you have to reach them in a human way. That's why I don't like all this. I like the digital piece, but sometimes we need to have a one-on-one conversation because I got to see where they are.
Okay.
And that helps me to bridge that.
A buddy of mine, Joe Levy, we worked together at IBM years ago. He made a point about knowing backgrounds is fundamental. We're taught before going research the company, understand the person, sending a note, all those kinds of things, building relationships. And I say a lots of times, and I mentioned this earlier, but I think the younger generation, because of the digital piece, they may be missing out on the people side of
Yes.
just sitting down having a conversation.
They don't, it's amazing. I mentor a lot of younger people, and one of the things I find is that they don't know how to communicate with people.
Yeah.
Yes, they can, they can look in a computer and send 1,000 texts and do it with both hands and all that kind of stuff. And when you ask them a question, they don't know how to write a basic letter. They don't have to write a basic note.
Yeah.
I interviewed a person that sent me a text and thanks for everything. Thought they had done a good job.
Yeah. And
that was a thank you letter. And I said, are we going to lunch or was this an interview? Because I don't understand this answer. I said, when you send her 3 paragraphs in the conclusion, call me back.
Okay.
And she asked me what they were. I brought her the test. I said, you have to show. So I find myself having to train people now in how to communicate with people, because corporate people communicate in a corporate language.
Yeah.
And you can't communicate with me with a text like I'm one of your peers.
Yeah.
You got to handle it professionally from beginning to end.
Okay, so business to business versus business to personal.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, cool. If you could give one piece of advice for someone who may see this interview or they want to get into event planning, PR, what advice would you give them? I know. So you said, well, I get a degree in XYZ. That's going to do it. That's not going to do it. That's not going to do it. What is the education beyond the education?
Oh, that's real simple. You got to have a love for events. A lot of people like the party. They don't like the journey. You know what I mean? Just like you said, I always use Star Trek where Spock said only Nixon could go to China. Only Raymond could be Raymond. Only you could be Ron. It takes a special person that can handle all the elements that it takes in an event, whether it's small or large, and you still got to deal with that person. Ask yourself, can you handle that? Make a list of all the things that's taken to make that event. Do you have the bandwidth for it? Do you have the time for it? If it falls apart, can you handle the backup? You can't fall apart with the event. A lot of people don't know how to pivot and how to rebound. Mm-hmm. The best part about an event planner is when the ship is going down, how do I save the event?
Yeah.
If you don't have the ability to do that, then just accept the invitation and go and enjoy yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen you at your events and you're like the maestro. I mean, you're there with I'm gonna use it with the baton, and you're like totally in control.
Move this, the one I always do, move that.
And I sit back and I'm amazed, and I'm watching all this. I say, he's just too cool, not stressed at all. But then again, this is your work.
Mm-hmm. And you can't look stressed. A lot of times, a lot of things to the world, everything is beautiful. Behind the scenes, I mean, I could be putting out 10 fires.
Yeah.
But the client and the people do not need to know that if you look stressed, then everybody else, you change the dynamic of the entire event and the entire equation. You've got to maintain your cool. That's the only way you can be a leader. When a leader falls apart, everybody falls apart.
Yeah, yeah. You know what I wanted to ask you? You did the Baroxi event on the second inauguration. Was that stressful, knowing that this is the president of the United States and you're going to be doing an event for him or his people? Was that stressful because the client is here? So let me just finish this, because we talk about, so you've done a lot of celebrity events, but when you're doing something for the president of the United States, that takes it to a whole different level.
You know something? That was one of the easiest events I ever did. I had so much fun doing it. First of all, we were all excited about an African-American president, and my event was one of the only sit-down dinners. There were lots of big parties. Mine was an actual sit-down dinner. So I had to go do tastings for wines, tastings for champagne, 29 dishes, pull together this menu, coming up with a theme, red, white, and blue. Everything, working with Secret Service, working with the White House, working with his people, trying to coordinate if he's going to come, always being ready to have Hail to the Chief ready, making sure we have a place where the cars come in, make sure, what's the route? I call it the Obama route to this day, which is the way out if the president comes. That's the route I need. I call it the Obama route. He's been gone 2 terms already. But it was a great, and it was so exciting for me. So I embraced it with I'm doing this for the president of the United States. I don't care what it takes to make this happen.
So when you look at the food chain, that's the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
Everything else falls below that. Because when I asked the question about egos that you're dealing with, with the celebrities and all those things, that your work has taken you into so many of these people's homes, and you develop relationship with them. But the president of the United States, that takes it to a different level. That takes it to
a different. He didn't attend again because it was the first term he went to everything.
Okay.
The second term he was a little tired, but we were the closest event to the White House. We were at the Marriott, was 1,300. He's 1,600. So we were. So I had this huge room that looks right on, the whole route with them coming and walking. So, in the spirit of my family, we always share something. I invited everybody I knew to that suite because I wanted everybody. We don't know. This is a historical moment, and I want everybody I know that I can share this with to be a part of it. So it was a chance for me to really show not only my appreciation for him and his presidency and this opportunity, but to extend that good and inspire somebody else. That's the whole thing made it special for me.
Yeah. So I'm sure with the work you do, high profile people, a lot of your work builds upon that. When somebody attends and say, this was pretty cool the way they set this up. Oh, this is the Maestro over here. Let me call them for my event. So talk to us through how important it is to make a statement, because people are always watching, and they say, for next event, I want to call up Raymond Lewis and have him come in and do my event.
Well, you asked me how they reach me. I mean, I'm trying to understand.
So what I'm asking you is that how important it is to set a standard that maybe a guest was there and they're looking to put together a dinner or an event or whatever it is, and they said, I like the way this is done. So the presence of you orchestrating all of this.
Well, that's a big part of your event. I never had a website until a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I never used one. It was all word of mouth. When you walk in the event, you should walk out with new business.
Okay.
Always treat your event like this. When I get my event, it's like a show. It's like opening night. I want to sell tickets the next day.
Okay.
When you walk in that door, you walk in it like you own it. As my friend says, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Walk in the door like a king. When I leave this room, someone will be wanting to know my name. Who was that person that did it? And another thing I'll advise is always open your own program. Let them know this is me.
I see.
I always open my program. I don't care if you have an MC. I'll introduce them. But this is a Raymond Lewis production.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So my buddy from Texas who always listens in, John said, word of mouth is the essence of networking.
He's right. He's right. People remember you before they remember your email.
Yeah.
They will remember you first. Go get the guy with the glasses, the good looking one. Yeah, that's him. They don't want to know RPL events, and it's too long to reach him, but they remember Raymond Lewis, and you can always find me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So
it's hard to find greatness. Always remember that. It's not hard to find greatness.
Okay, cool. Let's take a commercial break now, and then we'll come right back.
I want to thank you for doing this show in general, the series, because, I think one thing that people don't pay enough attention to internationally is that when you're dealing in business and you're looking at leadership and entrepreneurship, it doesn't matter what culture, it doesn't matter, geographically where you are, the religion, the language. People are people, right? And those things provide you context and color, but people are people. So when you have a forum where people from all over the world can say, hey, I'm having this issue, or hey, I've learned this in my career, that's important. And there's not enough of that, because we wouldn't be, I think, probably where we are with so much division if we had more forums like this. So me personally, I want to thank you for doing this, because I learned something, because I try to tune in every Friday, and I learned something every week from the various people that you have. And it just proves the point that people are people, and we're all in desperate need of being able to communicate, share, and look at leadership, strength in business all from the same perspective.
That was my number one friend, and we were next door neighbors in Saudi Arabia. He was the chief legal officer for the company that I worked for. I was the head of HR, and he was the chief legal officer. Now he's SVP for the American Bankers Association in DC. So cool, building up a network of people. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. We all have so many things going on. You're at Martha's Vineyard. You're browsing, getting ready to put another event. How do you stay inspired? Because I know sometimes the weight of the world can come on you and you're trying to figure things out. What does Raymond do to stay inspired and to always be energized?
Oh, well, there's cooking, there's traveling, always reading new things about events. I'm always interested to see how things are changing. I sign up for everything.
Okay.
I accept every invitation. I make a decision when I go to, but I'm always looking for new things. I'm always looking to see what's changing out there, where things fit in. You know, I'm at an age now where things have changed so much. They're doing online events. They're doing this. It's changed a lot. Digital plays a major role. But I had to put a stamp on a personal touch,
Okay.
a Rolodex that can deliver the kind of people that you want in that audience with purpose, that have the longevity of those relationships, that bring something to the table that can enhance not only your audience, but enhance your event and enhance the experience. So I'm always going out to places that's where I don't do everything. I do things strategically that keep me in the loop of this is somebody who should be there.
Okay.
You know, and number two, I like me. I enjoy what I do. You know, when I walk in the door, I know it's something special. For me, to keep me motivated, I've got to take time and pace myself.
I know.
Because I'm always ready to move.
I know that. You know, I'm kind of the same way because I work at odd hours. Next week I start at midnight because I'm working with a group out of Singapore because I'm in New York now to get my passport renewed. But I love what I do. And for me, it is not work. It is not work for me if I've got to fly to a different country every week. That's not work for me because I enjoy the people I'm going to meet on the other side.
Yeah. You know, I can live in a hotel for the rest of my life. I have no problem, as long as it's a suite. You know, I can't be tight. But I love going to other places and doing other things. I'm going to Korea in September to do something for a project I'm working on. I've done stuff in Paris. Last year I was in Portugal twice, Paris twice. I love that. I did stuff in London. I'm always doing stuff in the Caribbean. I'm working on stuff there now. I love learning new cultures and seeing how I can bridge those gaps. And I always want to be an ambassador for African American excellence.
Okay.
When I walk in the door, I say I walk in the door as an African American Black man that's doing great things.
Yeah. Here's my badge. Something you just mentioned was self-learning, and this is what I notice lots of times with people. They reach a certain height and they don't learn anymore. There's that thirst for not learning about whether I'm a lawyer, whether I am an events planner, whether I am an organizational consultant. So I always ask people, what are you reading? What videos are you watching as it relates to your work? How are you getting better at what you do? And sometimes that's a blank stare because they're not.
That's a challenge. You know what I mean? And it's true. If you don't keep learning and growing and reading and new things and doing stuff like that,
yeah,
you're going to be dead in the water. You're going to age yourself out, and you're going to bottom out because this changes so fast now. This changes so fast. I went to a conference, and the conference was all online, but it was so visual. It looked like you were right there.
Yeah.
So how do I validate a Raymond Lewis? Where do I come in? You go put yourself in places like the Cannes Lions Festival. We did one of the first diversity collectives. I was part of the first team that went in. You go to these conferences. You go to to BISLA. You go to the American Black Film Festival. You go to Hispanic, Asian American Business Development Center. The National Lesbian and Gay Chamber of Commerce in London. Go places and be an ambassador for your brand.
Yeah.
And it keeps going. You have to keep learning, or you will not be a part of it. You will slowly dwindle right out of business.
So my buddy Jim said the quote for the day: "The need for sweet," as you said.
That's right. I need room. I gotta lay stuff out. I can't.
So the self-learning is key, because what you talked about, your business was built on in-person. COVID flipped that. And so now it's coming back somewhat, but there's still a lot of virtual events. So you said I take every invitation and I go there, and so you go there as to be a part of it, but you're there learning. How was this done? Is that kind of?
I accept every invitation. I strategically go places. I don't want to be seen everywhere. You don't want to overexpose yourself. When you walk in the door, them should be glad to see you. You know, no. When I come in the door, this one of my friends said, "Now I know this is a good event because you finally came."
Stamp. That's the stamp. The Raymond Lewis stamp.
It's good. This is a good one.
It's good. So, what major challenges are you facing now in events? I know you're straddling both worlds. You in person and the virtual piece. What's the major challenge in the event space today?
You know something, Ron? I wanted to go back to this because you kept bringing up the COVID. That changed my business 100%.
It did.
It was a real challenge for me. Overnight, I was out of business.
Okay.
Every single thing I was doing was canceled. First, we couldn't go out.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out, oh my God, how am I going to handle this?
Same thing here. Okay.
You know what I did? I used the internet to my advantage. I love to cook. I created a thing called Reservation for One and a Table for Two. And I had candlelight dinner with anybody who wanted to join me. And I talked about what I did. And I would lay out outfits and get dressed for dinner, light the candles, cook, plate of my food. And people would call me and talk. And that was my way of it. I got dressed and went for a walk every day in some part of town to go see things. I started looking at what was going on in the world and see where can I fit my brand in, working with frontline workers, going to take care of it. I had to find ways to stay relevant because I said, this is going to end. How do I stay in the game? And people remembered me for that, And I told corporate people, I said, people are going to always get hungry. They're going to always get sick. Okay, right? But there will be life after this. Yeah. What is your plan? I went to them.
Okay.
And that's how they came back to me. That's how I jumped back in. I came back in with reemergence events. Okay. Re-embracing life again, post-traumatic events, things that would help people to say life is still valuable. I came up with this thing called the Universal Uptown Rainbow Stage, celebrating all universal cultures and colors, to just let people know that now we are a global family.
Okay.
This is important for you to know. And that's when they put me back in Cranes for top Black PR boutique firm and for top LGBTQ leader. Because I said everybody was and we all are represented here. Now, it's not limited to one group, one subgroup, one culture.
Yeah.
That it knew no boundaries. It woke us up.
So for the people that's listening in, if you make the Cranes New York business list for whatever list they have, that's top shelf. You don't go any higher than that when you make the Cranes list. So let's talk through the CEO series came about as a result of COVID. That's just how we started that. So let's try and do something online. And we kept building. Ade, who's in the background, is the mastermind behind all of it. And we were able to put it together. So let's talk about important influences in your life. Who shaped you? You talked about your grandmother. You talked about your mother. Give us some insights on people that were influential in you becoming Raymond of today.
Oh my gosh. Well, my father was with IBM. Okay. My father was one of the first executives in our family. Everybody had these different kind of jobs. My father got this job with this big corporate company when I was a little kid. It was such a big deal. I remember I couldn't wait to wear wingtip shoes and get a suit to dress like my father to go to work because he got up every morning, was leaving at 6, and I just thought he was the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Byron Lewis, who was the head of Uniworld, gave me my first shot in advertising and helped launch my company. He gave me the Pepsi-Cola contract in advance when they left there. Okay. Maurice Cox at Pepsi gave me the whole diversity and inclusion events. For 7 years, I worked under his leadership. Mr. Earl Graves put me in a magazine I admired for Black I
Yeah.
mean, this
Black enterprise.
I
Yeah.
was going to a Jewish high school, and I said, this Black magazine on business. I went to school to be a doctor. I wasn't trying to be a businessman, but I saw this thing, and I got a chance to talk to him and work with him through, a sponsorship. And he was very influential, gave me some good advice. Tanya Lombard at AT&T gave me a chance to do diversity events with her Humanity of Connection. I mean, there's so many people I can think of, Charlotte Otley with PR, Michael McMillan, Mark Morial, there's you. I would have never got to a Martha Stewart without you. We didn't even see those as opportunities.
Yeah.
When you started to see Black people, you gravitated to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a great thing to hit
Yeah.
those introductions. And this kind of personality was embraced, and you bring them in the fold.
Yeah.
So I was honored when people would introduce me, and I always wanted to represent you well.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, that was a good I remember the first time meeting, I think it was at Javits Center or something. And I said, this person I have to know, because we sat there and laughed and talked as if we've been knowing each other for years. But that says a lot about your personality too, Raymond, because you have an engaging personality that will bring people in closer.
Well, people always tell me, they say, well, Raymond, when you come in town, it's like the circus came in town. I said, no, the circus left. I'm still in town.
So if we look back as we begin to close out, I want to ask you about what would you say was the most important leadership lesson? So you talked about influential people. What would be the most important leadership lesson you've learned in your journey?
It's a combination: respect and humility.
Okay.
Respect for the people who came before you and opened the door and created opportunities. They were the first example of your excellence, and you need to carry that torch.
Hmm.
And humility is be humble enough to say, I'm here. I'm not going to be here forever. How do I pass the torch of succession? We don't leave. We need to leave young people with, I want you to go forward with this and learn this digital age and have a presence in it as a person that represents our brand, our culture, our agenda, and our uniqueness in the world. And you want to be an example to other people. So I think it's respect and humility. Those are the things I think will be very important. That's what I got from the pandemic. I mean, my journey was great. It's a challenge all the way along, but that woke me up to, what am I doing? Where do I want to go here?
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared for that. That blindsided me. You think you're going to change, but you didn't think the whole world was shut down.
Yeah. Yeah. It happened like that. So, one of the goals of the CEO series is to create this platform for successful people to share their journeys, because lots of times in the digital age, we see what we perceive as success, but we don't know the backstory behind it. And this is why it's important that we do this show, because the feedback we get from this show is always important. And today you brought it all into play in this 45 minutes. And we hope you enjoyed being a guest on the show. Are there any takeaways from your side?
Oh my God. I love this. I love this opportunity to talk to you. I didn't know you were in New York. I saw the map behind you. I was hoping you were going to be in Saudi Arabia saying, and there are people who want you to come over and see us, and people want you to come to Dubai.
We still want that. We'll do that.
I know you got a global reach. I said, when you asked me to be on this series, I said, I'm going on this show if I have to take an EMS truck. It's an honor to be here. You have a great network, and you want to build your. This is a classic example of building your brand, and expanding your network. You have an international reach. For an opportunity for me, a boy from Brooklyn, to have a Harlem-based business that has a Rolodex that people say worth $1 million, and then to get a chance to let the world see it, I welcome the honor. I'm grateful.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you so much. Hang on as we close out, and I'll come back.
Oh, absolutely. It was great. I look forward to hearing from everybody. And Ron, thank you. And thank you, Ade, your producer. I appreciate it. He made this whole process so seamless.
Okay, cool.
Ciao, ciao.